Chapter 1. Happy Place. Knott's Harbor, Maine. A cottage on the rocky shoreline, with knotty pine floorboards and windows that are nearly always open. The smell of evergreens and brine wafting in on the breeze, and white linen drapes lifting in a lazy dance. The burble of a coffee maker and that first deep pull of cold ocean air as we step out onto the flagstone patio, steaming mugs in hand. My friends, Willowly, honey-haired Sabrina, and a wisp of wave Cleo, with her tiny silver septum piercing and dip-dyed box braids. My two favorite people on the planet since our freshman year at Mattingly College. It still boggles my mind that we didn't know one another before that a stodgy housing committee in Vermont matched the three of us up. The most important friendships of my life all came down to a decision made by strangers. Chance. We used to joke that our living arrangement must be some government-funded experiment. On paper, we made no sense. Sabrina was born and raised Manhattan heiress, whose wardrobe was pure Audrey Hepburn, and whose bookshelves were stuffed with Stephen King. Cleo was the painter daughter of a semi-famous music producer and an outright famous essayist. She'd grown up in New Orleans and showed up at Mattingly in paint-splattered overalls and vintage Doc Martens. And me, a girl from southern Indiana, the daughter of a teacher and a dentist receptionist, at Mattingly because the tiny, prestigious liberal arts school gave me the best financial aid, and that was important for a pre-med student who planned to spend the next decade in school. By the end of our first night living together, Sabrina had us lined up on her bed watching Clueless on her laptop and eating a well-balanced mix of popcorn and gummy worms. By the end of the next week, she had custom-made shirts for us, inspired by our very first inside joke. Sabrina's read, Virgin Who Can't Drive. Mine read, Virgin Who Can Drive. And Cleo's read, Not a virgin, but great driver. We wore them all the time, just never outside the door. I loved our musty room in the rambling white clapboard building. I loved wandering the fields and forest around the campus with the two of them. Loved that first day of fall when we could do our homework with the windows open and drinking spicy chai or decaf laced with maple syrup and the smelling the leaves curling up and dropping from the branches. I loved the nude painting of Sabrina and me that Cleo made for her final figure drawing class project, which she'd hung over our door so it was the last thing we saw on our way out of class, and the polar boards we taped on either side of it, the three of us at parties and picnics and coffee shops in town. I loved knowing that Cleo had been lost in her work whenever her braids were pulled into a neon green scrunchie, and her clothes smelled like turpentine. I loved how Sabrina's head would tip back on an outright cackle whenever she read something particularly terrifying, and she'd kick her Grace Kelly loafers against the foot of our bed. I loved poring over my biology textbooks, running out of highlighter as I went because everything seemed so important, breaking to clean the room top to bottom whenever I got stuck on an assignment. Eventually, the silence would always crack, and we'd end up giggling giddily over text from Cleo's prospective new girlfriend, or outright shrieking as we hid behind her fingers from the slasher movie Sabrina had put on. We were loud. I'd never been loud before. I grew up in a quiet house where shouting only ever happened when my sister came home with a questionable new piercing, or a new love interest, or both. The shouting always gave way to an even deeper silence after, and so I did my best to head the shouting off at the pass, because I hated the silence, felt every second of it as a kind of dread. My best friends taught me a new kind of quiet, the peaceful stillness of knowing one another so well you don't need to feel the space, and a new kind of loud. Noise as celebration, as the overflow of joy at being alive, here, now, I couldn't have imagined being any happier, loving anywhere else as much. Not until Sabrina brought us here, to her family's summer home on the coast of Maine. Not until I met Wyn.